Let's finally examine the lines of transmission that allowed this Islamic/Arabic astronomy to make its way from the Islamic world, the Islamic empire, into Renaissance Europe. And actually, it made its way to Renaissance Europe at some point. The transmission began before that in order to allow for the ancient Greek sciences, now as translated by the Arabs, and with all of the additions and modifications, some of which were very drastic, to actually bring about the Renaissance in Europe. So the first one such line of transmission was by Gerardo of Cremona from Italy. This was in the 12th century. He actually spent about 30 years in Toledo making translations into Latin of Ptolemy's Almagest. Remember, Ptolemy's Almagest was the Arabic translation of Ptolemy, where there was also commentary on Ptolemy's work itself, in fact, and also translated the astronomical coordinates by Az-Zarqali. These also became known as the Toledan tables. Another one such line of transmission was Michael Scott, and his name Scott refers to his origin, but he actually studied in Spain and in Sicily. But remember, Spain used to be part of Islamic Spain at the time period, and so he was he was one of those astronomers who was actually financed by Emperor Frederick II to translate Arabic works. And that was at the time translations into Latin. So he actually translated Al-Batruji's astronomical treatises on planetary motion, and also Ibn Rushd, who is known in the West as Averroes. He translated Averroes' commentaries on Aristotle. And yes, some of you might say, well, wasn't that during the time of the Crusades? And that's very much true. It actually was. So as the Crusades are happening in one corner of the world, the translations from Arabic into Latin were being financed on the other side of the world in Europe. King Alfonso X also played a role because he actually commissioned the very first translation of Arabic text, not into Latin, but into Castilian Spanish, which was a big move on his part, basically deciding that Latin was not the language of science necessarily from there on, but actually veering off from that tradition. He sponsored the translations of the books of astronomical knowledge by Ibn Qurra, and also the translations of Al-Sufi's treatises on the fixed stars, as well as Al-Bayruni's text on spherical astrolabe. And if you look at this diagram, which was actually found in the work or the manuscript of Gregory Chionitis from the 15th century, I hope you recognize the Tusi couple in this. You can see that the Tusi couple is shown in here, but without much commentary on the Tusi couple. And perhaps there were many such other translations and manuscripts, such as the Chionitis manuscript, that actually carried the Tusi couple in its midst, perhaps haven't been found yet, or maybe buried in some libraries. But because this one was actually found after the fall of Constantinople, it was brought over to Italy then, and that would be the 15th century, the mid-15th century. And so not long after that, we see Copernicus's work come into existence that carries in its midst the Tusi couple literally. And so, as I said, there is no advancement in science that just would be a big leap from the old, very problematic Ptolemaic model all of a sudden to the Copernican one, without some intermediary ones that become stepping stones for future theorems. So perhaps there are other manuscripts, such as Chionitis's, that Copernicus had the opportunity to gaze at or look at and use those and incorporate those into his theorem. The Crusades definitely helped increase the spread, the how fast, of course, intellectual discourse can spread from region to region. So when people brought back from their crusades things and memorabilia, they also brought back foods and medicine, but also ideas and science. And so, for example, if we take a look at the Emperor Frederick II, whom I've just mentioned in a couple of slides ago, yes, on one end he was basically sending people to fight in the Crusader Wars in the Middle East, but on the other side he was also corresponding with Muslim philosophers and scientists in his own court in Palermo in Sicily. And like I said, also sponsoring translations of scientific works. And Frederick actually encouraged the Muslim scientists to do so, and he followed in the footsteps of his father, Roger II, who actually had sponsored the Muslim geographer Al-Idrisi. So he financed basically Al-Idrisi in his expeditions. And here you can see the Roman Emperor Roman II in this painting, receiving Muslim scholars in his court in Palermo. And then in this woodcut that is from a book about the nervous system, this was published in Venice in the 15th century, almost beginning of the end of the 15th, or almost beginning of the 16th century. And if you look up right here at the names of these books, you would actually see that these are reference books that refer to the philosophers that would be very famed and known at that time. And so in addition to basically works by ancient Greek philosophers such as Aristotle and Hippocrates, you would also find work that would be by Avicenna. So you can see that, which is Ibn Sina. Ibn Sina actually wrote his many-volume book known as Canon of Medicine. That was a standard textbook used in Europe for 400 years. And you can see that, of course, as one of those textbooks on the nervous system, because it's obviously a library in this woodcut that's predicted in this, or depicted in this woodcut. Avicenna is mentioned in here. Rhazes is also mentioned in here, who is known by his original name Arazi. In the West he was known as Rhazes, and also Averroes, and you can see that over here. So these were basically giant authors that were very known, commonplace, important authors in the scene, in the Phoenician scene, in the basically 15th century. And that tells you how these important works that were translated from Arabic became very central in the development of many ideas in the time period that we refer to as Renaissance Europe. Here's a short list if you are interested in going back to some of the resources that I've used for this presentation. There's actually a lot more that I don't include in this list just because they don't fit in here. But if you want a more exhaustive list, you can go back to the paper, my master's thesis in history that I wrote, that's at the archives at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. And again, the title of that paper is The History of the Observatory as an Institution from Moraga to Mount Wilson. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation as much as I've enjoyed delivering it to you, and I hope that it's perked your interest in some of these areas in the history of astronomy that you might want to delve into in your own research.